In episode 5 of the Black Hawk build, we are going to attack the weathering and some detail painting in the cockpit of the MH-60. This video comes to you in cooperation with Gary Airbrushes, MRP Paints and ICM. Alright, after another layer of matte varnish, it is time to add some superficial paint distress. And by superficial, I mean scratches that haven't gone to the bare metal. Just dinks, nicks and other small paint imperfections. Nothing very heavy, just a little bit of texture with this watercolor pencil. Troops, maintenance and whatnot moving around, creating a warm surface. One of the things I like to do is to highlight the edges of the panel lines. Being edges, they are more prominent to chipping and scratches and paint damage in general, and that creates a good visual separation between the different panels, and the panel lines are outlined as well. Having a flat coat is very essential for this technique, because otherwise the watercolor pencil will not have anything to stick to. So here I'm concentrating around the edges to add the chipping and to complement the highlight that I did with the oil paints. In general, it is nice to inspect some images of the real aircraft, if possible fairly well weathered one, so you can judge where the most traffic is and where it is most suitable to apply your weathering. Because weathering is nice and cool and makes the model look more alive, but there are things that we need to get under consideration. For instance, it is not cool to do paint chipping to bare metal and have, for instance, aluminum paint peeking through when the actual part is some sort of composite or wood or anything that is not metal. So I guess you understand what I mean. I have seen people make such weathering using a paintbrush, but that's way out of my league, so I'm doing it the lazy and easy way with this watercolor pencil, and it does a great job. As you can see, my scratches are not exactly prominent, but they're still visible feature of the item we have on hand. In addition to the weathering, we can use this technique to pick out individual knobs and buttons on the instrument panel or other panels, and this can be done with a very good precision. Also, if you are in a mood to torture your eyes, you can do some edges. I do not recommend doing all of those if you want to maintain some portion of your sanity, but a few items will be good and will make the instrument panel look a little bit more interesting. I also like to include some silver. As you know, tumblers and other buttons are metal, so it is perfectly fine to use silver pencil for this and highlight them up. And just like that, the instrument panel is coming alive bit by bit. The panel outlining is very useful when we have these raised panels, and they're rather difficult to work on with other tools because of the vicinity of other details around them. Some sharpening every now and then is necessary to keep a good sharp edge, which enables us to draw very fine lines. Some items, like the rudder pedals, deserve some more severe weathering and exposed metal. There will be always some excess, so it is easily removed with a few swipes with the brush, and here we have the highlighted edges, some paint distress, and now I can focus on the knobs and buttons.
I have to admit that without the people on Patreon, I was most likely going to give up a few years back. Thanks to their support, this channel is still alive and kicking, for which I am very grateful. Even if you don't want to pay, you can join as a free member and gain access to my weekly updates. If you decide to join the big supporter tier, you'll get daily updates of my current builds, access to a library of my previous builds, and a 50% discount on my 3D printable items. On top of all of that, the massive supporter tier gets the videos well in advance without ads or sponsored content. Also, this top tier gets free access to my 3D models. Follow the link in the description and join today. You will not be disappointed.
If you are feeling brave, you can always search for some color in the reference images and try to apply it with a brush, maybe a sharp needle or something like that, but in this case I think this is enough.
I would also like to ask you, how do you feel about this type of content? Because I feel like when I am doing voiceover, well, after I have finished the build, I kinda forget some of the experiences that I had, some of the emotions, being happy or dissatisfied with something. So I think that this format allows me to express my opinion and feeling right in the moment, so you get to experience it too and make your own decisions based on that.
The bare metal chipping on the seat and on the pilot seats I'm going to do only on the door side and on the inside of the seat, where it is possible to have some abrasion from the clothing or some other gear. But most of it is going to land on the door side. Next up, I'm going to add some dust accumulated in corners and other crevices. Usually these birds operate in dusty environments, so this is what we are going to assume. For this I'm going to use Tamiya's XF57 buff, heavily diluted with isopropanol, and my trusted Gallery Mobius 0.2.
I will leave a coupon code for 10% discount from Gallery's awesome airbrushes down in the description.
When the paint is thinned so much, it doesn't cover all the previously applied chipping and effects to a certain degree, so it just adds something on top, and I think this looks pretty convincing. Now I'm going to do exactly the same here on the troop cabin, but with the nozzle cap on, so I can get a wider pattern. And since the paint is very highly diluted, we need somewhat large amount of layers in order to build up the color. Every now and then I put some back pressure on to mix the paint and the isopropanol. Now for the wider areas I will increase the pressure, as it was previously about 0.8 of a bar. Now it is to 1 bar. I'm putting more of the paint on the edges where it will meet with the bulkhead and the side walls. The reasoning behind this is that with the movement, troops are removing the dust to some extent from the higher traffic areas, but still I'm going to apply generally everywhere. And manipulating the opacity, I will get the parts I want to be more exaggerated. Of course, parts like the doors are going to get the same treatment. On those, generally, I'm going to concentrate on the lower areas. And just to be sure, I'm going to compare the two parts while working on them, so I can be more or less the same. The thing with paints like this one, with diluted with isopropanol, the airbrush should be moving, because every time you sit on the same place you're going to get defects in the paint, because the paint thinner is quite aggressive. In areas like these small corners here, we have, this is actually horizontal surface, tucked away. Probably no one is ever cleaning it. So it deserves a little bit of action too. Some more prominent features may capture some their own dirt, so they will get it. Next up, I will take a serious risk, remove the window maskings on the inside and apply some dusting on and around the glass. How this will work, I will know when I remove the outside masking, and this means practically at the end of the build. By the way, the interior masking turned out better than I anticipated. No bleed-throughs, no defects, everything looks pretty much perfect. So let's now go ahead and ruin it. Now, using some acrylic thinner and the Q-tip, I will clean a portion of the window, the central part, just like if somebody had kind of quickly cleaned it up with his sleeve so he can see. As usual, I'm doing quite a lot of experimenting with my builds. Now let's deal with the instrument panel. Only this and this are displays. These here are the artificial horizon and other items. So those two displays, when turned off, have slightly greenish hue, for which I'm going to use a translucent green paint. For the application, I'm using a sewing needle, as you can see, slightly modified eyelet or socket or whatever you call it, and together with the black background I think we get a rather representative look and a little bit of color on this monochromatic dashboard. Upon further investigation, I think we can add some green right here. The actual stance is like that, but on some models this here is the artificial horizon, but it is digital, So I don't know, maybe this is the idea behind this dashboard layout in the case of ICM. I don't know how it will look when turned off. I will assume it's a regular LCD display, which may very well be matte black. Using the same method, I'm going to apply some super matte black from MRP, and let's see how this will work or will not work. Now I'll let it dry and see how it looks. So on the left side we have them already matted. Not much of a difference, but I think it's going to look good at the end. For the smaller dials I'm going to use transparent UV resin. Next I will blast the resin with some UV light so that it can solidify. And this is the final look of the instrument panel after the UV curing. Not bad for out of the box. As you'll probably agree, we are in a very desperate need of some color. So here I will use pigment markers to add some. These are some warning buttons, I think, which have slightly orange hue. Nothing too fancy, just a little bit to pick them out. And also we can do the same for a few knobs that may or may not be red. Now there is a very tiny portion of the collectives that are painted in yellow, which will be very difficult to pull off, but there we go, just a little bit on the edge. I'm using a very muted color so that it is not too stark. Okay, another important item in this aspect are the red buttons on the control sticks. Again, I'm using a subdued red. And with all these colorful things complete, it is time to start the assembly. However, it is also time to finish this episode. And on that note, stay tuned for the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy modeling, fellas!